Because this is the unusual way of teaching, because many a time we are exposed to teaching students, but when it comes to faculty, the dynamics change. And I would request if we can have an interactive session, right? This is the first session of the day, and usually in the first session, people do have the high energy, and I hope that you maintain this tempo throughout the day. The topic that I'm going to cover today is customer discovery. So a little bit about where I come from. So basically, I am an engineer. I'm a mechanical engineer. And like every other engineering student, at the end of the 4 years, we decide that we don't want to do engineering. But unfortunately, I did master's MTech in manufacturing process and system. And then in PhD, I realized, okay, I'm so done with mechanical. It does not have any relevance for my life. So then I switched to a domain called technology management. So I completed my PhD from IIT Kharagpur, as ma'am said. So the domain of my research was appropriate technology and its relevance in developing countries. So where we actually found out how the low-income communities are trying to develop technology that solves a particular need. And from there onwards, I developed an interest in entrepreneurship. Unlike today's generation, where they get to hear entrepreneurship from a very young age, the I heard about entrepreneurship was during my BTech final year. Right now, we all can agree that how fast the world is changing and how people are exposed to entrepreneurial ideas at a very young age. Now, as the program title suggests, innovation and entrepreneurship, so I am been assigned the task of walking you through a concept called customer discovery, right? But before I dive into it, I want to know a few things from all of you, right? So is there any specific framework in entrepreneurship? Or where do we start the entrepreneurial journey? This is the first question. Try to stop me if I do not make any sense, and please feel free to interrupt me as many times as you want. So what is the first step in entrepreneurial journey?
To find the demand.
You find the demand, okay, and
Demand and gas of the people.
Identification of needs of the people. And ma'am, how much time do I have?
You can go ahead with 1.5 hours.
Okay, perfect. I'm just not wearing my watch today, so please let me know. Okay, perfect, yes. Demand, identifying the needs, and what else? Any thought that comes to mind? See, the beauty of management that we all have to appreciate is there's no right or wrong answer. You need to speak your mind out. And if I believe that you all are educators, you need to encourage the students in your class to freely share their thoughts, right? So,
To know the local marketing strategies.
more than a local marketing strategy. And the very critical thing that we all are missing out. Finance comes later. And is it okay if I use a little bit of Hindi in between? Yeah, okay. That makes my life easier. Okay. And finance, demand, local need, and what else?
Competition in the market.
Huh?
Competition in the market.
Competition in the market. All of these answers are close to the right answer, but the first step in entrepreneurial journey lies within the individual, the entrepreneur, that whether he is ready to become an entrepreneur and take part in this roller coaster journey. Without you taking a decision that this is the career path that I'm going to choose for myself, right? The entrepreneurial journey never starts, right? So the first decision or the first point of entrepreneurship is that you are ready to be an entrepreneur at the first place. Now, if you are ready to be an entrepreneur at the first place, then either you're trying to solve a problem or you have found a gap, right? And then you decide upon like what is the competition, where do I get the finance, yes or no? So what is an entrepreneur generally does? He identifies a need, he identifies a demand. So what is the result of that? How do we define entrepreneurship? Because without understanding the essence of entrepreneurship, it does not make sense of going through customer discovery, value proposition, lean canvas, everything, right? Now, what does an entrepreneur do? Any thoughts? Manufacturing a product. And is it always related to product?
Marketing. Services also.
So when I know know the profile of the people sitting here. So are you all from the engineering background, or do we have management people here?
It's a mix.
It's a mix. How many of
Startups, faculty,
Huh.
and
Startups? So how many of are engineering actually? Okay, okay. And which stream of engineering? Civil, okay. Computer science, okay. Electronics, okay. Yes, so do an entrepreneur actually manufactures a product? Then what does he do? So entrepreneur is a person, right? He's not a zombie or he's not an animal. He's a person. So is his job is only to manufacture a product? Then what he does? Execute what?
he has to take the risk of selling the products or whatever it is. Service
Risk
or
of selling the product and turn it into reality and so what happens when he turns this idea into reality and develops a product or a service? What does it happen? What does it lead to? He will calculate cash flow, inflow, outflow, he take risk, but where it is leading to? Identifying different category of customer. To fulfill the need. So what happens when the entrepreneur fulfills the need? What does it lead to? Identification of problem, fulfilling a need, but what does it lead to? Of course he makes some money, right? And if it's a social entrepreneur, he does not necessarily need to make money, but where it is leading to? To make profit and? So for example, the water bottle on the desk of this ma'am, right? So it might be that some entrepreneur has developed this bottle, right? So he is selling this product, he's creating profit. Exactly, that's the word that I'm trying to get. Creation of value is the necessity of an entrepreneur, right? So why is someone using a bottle, or why are you using a cell phone, or why are you using a pen? Because it creates some value for you, right? What would have happened if that product or service does not create did not create value? Would you be using it? Yes or no? No, right? So what sort of value does an entrepreneur create is a question. The value creation is the important of an entrepreneur, and in turn, the entrepreneur turns his idea into reality, takes risk, inflow, outflow of cash, judging the market, ascertaining the competition. All of this lead to the creation of value. So what kind of value do we see, or does an entrepreneur create? Pick up any random object that you see on this auditorium and see what kind of value does it deliver to you. The value must be satisfied with the people, but I want, is there any category of value that we are talking about? Just random thought. Value does it, an entrepreneur can create through his product or service. Does not exist, but so what sort of value is that? So creativity is an entrepreneurial skill. Right, but I'm asking, what are the categories of value that an entrepreneur can create? Okay, close, very good. And? Very good. Emotional, psychological, I put it in, very, very good. Emotional value, psychological, what the other thing? Just give it a thought. Value, social value. Value for money, you are getting it. That the term is economical value. So an entrepreneur can create a functional value, economic value, social value, or emotional value. Let's try one. So functional means, what is the meaning of functional? That product or service solves a particular function. Now for example, from the guest house to this place, I came by a car. Let's assume that that is a Tesla car developed by Elon Musk, right? So Elon Musk is an entrepreneur, right? He has developed car. Now the basic function of a car is to make the person commute from point A to point B. If isn't able to help you for commutation, can I say that the car is delivering its intended use or it's solving a purpose? No, right? So that means the function of a car is to create value in transferring or transporting people from point A to point B. So that is the meaning of functional value. Now coming to economic value, can you think of a product that creates economic value or value? Just give it a thought, economic value. We are all surrounded with gadgets, we are all surrounded with different services, right? So can you think of economic value? Am I making sense? Yes, so economic value. So what is economic value? Yes? Affordability, right? So can you think of a product or service that has brought affordability? Huh? Diesel. Huh? Huh? So any product or service that has created economic value?
Reasonable cost, ma'am. Maybe.
How? I'm asking an example of economic value. There are iPhones available, and at the same time there are Android available, Android phones, right? So why are you using Android phones over Apple phones? Affordability, right? So affordability is an important criteria, and so now having said that, Apple has certain set of customers, right, whom he targets, right, and those set of people choose Apple because of some features it provides. But there are other set of people who use the same Android phone, but why they are not using Apple phone? One reason is affordability, and second one is economic background. So did you understand? Now the next one is social value. How entrepreneur creates social value?
Benefit of society.
Benefit of society came eco-friendly products. So Bhanushree ma'am gave you an example of the movie Padman, which is actually inspired by Arunachala Murugathan, right? So what sort of value did he create? He created low sanitary napkins. And where did he find how did he find a problem? He saw his wife using discarded materials during her menstrual cycle, right? And then he realized that, oh, this is a problem faced by women of all ages, right? And people do not have the access to a low-cost napkins, right? So with this, he tried to solve a problem of the society. So by developing affordable napkins, so he created social value through his product. So are we clear about the social value? Now the last value is emotional or psychological value. So can you think of a product or a service that creates an emotional value for you? Just think. ChatGPT is an economic value, right? So with going through different resources and paying different prices for, you just get at the tap of a click. Economic value, ChatGPT, very good. My question is emotional value or psychological value? How and where you find such value? Huh? Kids-related products and?
Any product using for happiness.
So you tap into someone's happiness or the emotions, right? You would see there are some people who would still prefer to wear the watch of their grandparents. There are brands, right? So what they're tapping is into the emotions of the people, right? It is also serving the function of showing the time, right? So an entrepreneur, through all of this, creates functional, social, emotional, and economic value. So value creation is an important outcome of entrepreneurship. So apart from value, what else does it create? Value creation is one aspect. So what is the other aspect that it creates? Utility, I can club it as the value creation. Novelty, trust, okay, I'll put it all on their value. Now the question, does an entrepreneur create an impact? So impact and value are the important aspect in entrepreneurship. Now, what are the things which I can't club it as entrepreneurship? Any thought? Things which don't qualify as entrepreneurship. Huh? something that is called criminal entrepreneurship. So Amrisha was saying that there is a lot of sandalwood, smuggling happens. Smuggling was the right? So, right word. So those kind of entrepreneurs are called criminal entrepreneurship. But my question is, what are the things which we don't say is entrepreneurship? Very good. Traditional family business does not qualify as entrepreneurship. And then if I have to dissect the word entrepreneurship, or how do I define entrepreneurship, then what should be the criteria, or what should be the word to be put in to define entrepreneurship? Any thought? Just give it a thought. How do I define, how do I make a lay person standing outside this campus define entrepreneurship? They are going to ask you, ma'am, or come to our institute. You will say that we came for a FDP program on innovation and entrepreneurship. So he would ask you that, can you describe entrepreneurship to me? So how do you describe him? I gave you keywords, right? Huh?
Being an individual, independent.
So are we talking about, please try to understand there is a distinction between entrepreneur and entrepreneurship. Exactly. So entrepreneur is a person and entrepreneurship is a process. So if I'm defining entrepreneurship as a process, so then what is that process? What happens in this process? Identifying the gap and product development and finance and resource facility, creating employment and sales. Okay. So when we are saying, that means there are some set of input and there will be an output. So what are the input and what are the output and what does it lead to? Huh? Resources input. Resources input in, and what are the other ways of inputs or other sources of input? Raw materials, okay. So is it only raw materials? Then I would say it is an industrialist, right, or industries. Are raw materials the only thing? That will go into the process. So human resources, okay, and contribution, the outcome of it, right? But if you're saying it is a process, and where does this process start? Where does this process end? And what actually is happening? So for example, let's say I am claiming myself to be an entrepreneur, right? So I want to develop this mic, right? So this is the outcome. This is a product that I'm going to sell in the market, right? So to this, what should be the process so that I can say this process as an entrepreneurship? What shall I do? It is coming from engineering point. I directly jumped to production. Yes. So novelty should be there. Okay, very good. And understanding, very good. Understanding the right problem and
Customer segmentation. Financial support, customer segmentation.
customer segmentation, finance, okay, and demand. Okay. All of them are right. But how do I express this definition to a layman is my question. Entrepreneur do?
It is the process of starting business.
Exactly. Entrepreneurship is the process or the act of starting a new business, not a business. Newness is the word that hides in entrepreneurship. Now, quote unquote, what does this newness means? And why do we describe it as a new business, not a general business? Which brings to my next question. What is the difference between a businessman and an entrepreneur? I'll give you 2 minutes, think upon it and give me the answer. I'll repeat my question. I said the definition of entrepreneurship, the simplest way you can define entrepreneurship is the act of starting a new business that creates value for the economy, right, and have an impact. If I'm saying it is a new business, right, then how do I differentiate businessman with an entrepreneur? Entrepreneurs also start business, businessmen also start business. Then why do I not say that business? So for example,
maybe the retailer who can purchase from the entrepreneur.
right? So innovative. Okay, so what are define a businessman and entrepreneur? Entrepreneur is also a businessman. Entrepreneur can be called a businessman, but a businessman cannot be called an entrepreneur. So that means there are some traits that defines a businessman from an entrepreneur. So what are those traits?
See, my father is in agriculture. Started businesses and become as an entrepreneur.
Your father is a farmer, right?
I'm going to start a new business.
So how do you start a new business? So when I say that entrepreneurship is the act of starting a new business, so what does this new business means?
Agri-related product.
Agri, okay.
Product I can put it offer. So here I become as an entrepreneur.
Why you are not a businessman again?
Because my father is not in business. He's not doing business.
Because he said that traditional business cannot be said as a entrepreneurship, right? So if you are starting new, so what is that new that you are bringing in the farming sector is my question. Are there any traits? Many a time businessman starts with the same idea. For example, if someone has a momo shop near the Isa Tirupati campus, you see another 10 days there is another shop.
New in the sense.
So that means he is just replicating the idea. He did not think of any innovative aspect in it, right? What can be the other differentiating factor or trait between businessman and entrepreneur?
Businessman sells many number of things.
Businessman?
Only one segment he
Okay.
leads.
Entrepreneur, he can prepare the product. Businessman, he can create the demand, but if the buying and selling the product, ultimately.
So another differentiating factor is that businessman plays in the market, but an entrepreneur creates a new market. So what do I mean by this statement? Businessman operates in the same market, but entrepreneur creates a market. What is the difference? That means it's a new market. So when I say that entrepreneurship is associated with the word newness, so newness, it can be in the terms of launching new product or services, right? Or you are trying to come up with an innovative thing, right? What can be the other word? You are creating a new market. So when I'm saying a new market, what does new market means? Market is already there, but if I'm saying new market, am I bringing new people or am I bringing new people from another planet?
Introducing new product in the market.
That means you are letting people experience a thing which they were never used to do it before, unless and until your product came. Now, for example, we see a lot of EV vehicles on the road. So what this EV industry did? It created a new set of customers who are environmentally conscious. So did not EV create a new market? Can you give me other examples of new market? So solar panels. So either entrepreneurship can be terms of you create a new market or you create new business or service, or you spot a demand or spot an opportunity that you take action and create products, right? Next question is, what is examples of other new market type? We gave example of solar farm, we gave examples of EV. What are the other? Afghan? Okay, organic, I said Afghanistan, okay. Now, I don't know, I'm in my 30s, hearing problem, yeah. Organic farms, how?
Organic products.
How did it create a new market? So let's say that you are an entrepreneur and you want to do something around the organic farm, right? So how does it create a new market? What are you making people do which they were not doing before? More conscious about health. Okay, very good. Now, how many of you use Zomato or Swiggy? Zomato, Swiggy, right? Okay, people who are not raising hand, they're like, "Ghar ka khana khana hai hame." Now, what did Zomato and Swiggy did? Now, so Zomato and Swiggy was new for our country. You may argue that, ma'am, Zomato and Swiggy sort of serve already there in the Western market. But we say that the founder of Zomato and Swiggy as an entrepreneur. Right? Yes or no? Who is the founder of Zomato, by the way? Dipinder Goyal, right? So I should have called Dipinder Goyal as businessman, but why did I say Dipinder Goyal as an entrepreneur? What did he do?
He entered new.
Exactly, he entered a new market. So the new market was India. So how did he enter? How did he create that new market? So that means earlier people were not able to see the restaurant reviews or the menus. So he created a platform which allowed people to have a restaurant, right, and let them order food through online. So what is the innovativeness that you see in here, and what is the new market that he created?
Only the app, madam, mobile app.
So mobile app he created, but how did he find the gap?
Because that is not available.
That means there is a certain gap that he found in the Indian market, and that gap lead him to create a mobile app, and that app lead to the creation of a new Indian market, right? So what is happening here? Gap identification, product or service creation, right? And then creating value, right? Now what sort of value did Zomato create? Huh? Service, but what is that kind of value? Is it a functional, is it a economic, is it a social, or is it a emotional? What kind of value did it create?
Functional, mostly.
Mostly functional value, right? So he created a set of customers, in new Indian customers who wanted to use this mobile app to order food online. Now coming back to the next question, we use Ola, right? Ola, the founder of Ola is right? So what did he do? Before Ola launched, there was Uber. But what did Ola do in Indian market? What did he do?
Taxi.
Taxi services, online taxis. So that was new to the concept to customers, right? Now there is another company, Rapido. What did Rapido do? So where did they find the problem? Ola and Uber were there, but Rapido came quite late to the Indian market, right? But still we say that Rapido is the founders are entrepreneurs, right? So what did Rapido do?
He introduced a two-wheeler,
So
to
low profile.
low cars.
So they found out that in metro cities there is a lot of traffic congestions, right? And there is no avenue for the two-wheelers, right? So with this they launched an app where you can either go for a bike or for a auto, right? So that also created a new market. So newness is an essential trait of entrepreneurship, in turn where you create value and impact. So newness can be in terms of new products, services, or creating a new market altogether. So are we clear on these three things? Now you might argue that, ma'am, if is there is another set of entrepreneurs who is doing the same thing. So should I call him an entrepreneur or not? What would be your answer to it?
Possible, madam. Madam, if the word new is added to his work, then we can call him as an.
So let's say that there is Rapido and I come up with a company called Sapido. So I'm also offering the same service. So in what I would be called as an entrepreneur? Exactly. So if I'm providing the service in a different manner to different geography, then I would be also called as an entrepreneur. So sir mentioned providing the service in a different manner. So when you're providing the service in a different manner, then what I'm doing there? Then I'm making some innovative or innovation in the process. Now you might question me that is innovation necessary for entrepreneurs to begin with? Might be or may not be. Innovation is required for an entrepreneurial journey to stay ahead of the competition, but always not necessary that you start with innovation, right? Now the next question, then what is innovation? So let's say that Rapido is operating in the southern region of India. I came with the Sapido where it did not go to northeast Indian states, right? That means I created a new market for the northern eastern state. So I'm also called an entrepreneur because I made innovation in the process or in terms of new market. Then what is innovation and where does this innovation happen?
Finding the new area.
Finding the new area. So how do we define innovation is the next question.
It may be new product or service or new process.
So new product or service, okay, and what are some of the innovation that you see inside this auditorium? Some innovation.
The structure of the building.
The structure of the building, how the earlier building was done. Design, okay, design is a central element. What else? All of you are using cell phones nowadays, right? Like our sixth organ of our body, right? Now, how has the communication has been innovative? What was the earlier sources of communicating with people? Earlier it was like word of mouth. Yes or no? Right? And then what came? Huh? Pigeon was like the in her ancestor, huh? Pigeon, right? First was pigeon, and then came word of mouth, telegrams, and then, huh?
Letters,
Pamphlets, right? And then STD, the landlines, and now you see. So now what has happened in this entire process? Transformation, right? Transformation of something old to new that creates value. So can I say this entire process is innovation? Right? Now the question is, now we have heard everything. We know what is entrepreneurship, what is innovation, right? What is what are the types of value that an entrepreneur creates, right? Now let's talk about if we are deciding to come up with a new organic product, right? So where should I get started? I decided that I want to be an entrepreneur, and through my organic product, I want to create a new market, right? So how do I create a new market? Is there any framework for it? Where should I get started? Should I directly jump into, putting all my money and resources and team members to start working on the organic firm and then start directly selling it? Or is there any other, pathway where I can follow?
Survey the gap in the market first of all.
Let's assume that I have identified there is a gap in the market. So how should I get started now?
A research company.
Research?
Company.
I will develop a research company.
So many companies they are introducing new products.
So market research. So market research, what I'm trying to get from market research?
And the inputs from the customers.
So input from the customers, okay, and? Identification of the needs, right? So is market research need to, introduce this organic, let's say I'm coming up with an organic soap, which caters to all skin type, right? So many a time there are soaps in the market which does not suit an oily skin or a dry skin. So my soap caters to all skin types, right? And I did a market research. So what should be the next step? Advertisement. But what is the guarantee that I will succeed?
To test market.
To test market. Should I test the market before, after launching the product, or should I test the market even before getting started with the development of soap?
Before launching of the new product, we are going to test marketing.
So pilot, so all of you agree that a pilot study is required. How many of you disagree that pilot study is not required?
Test marketing.
It depends on the service. So are there any areas where you think that, pilot testing is not required, preliminary customer feedback is not required?
Yes.
What are those areas?
Films.
Films, okay, and what else? But should I call film people as an entrepreneur? Then I should call every director as an entrepreneur, isn't it? Huh. Then I would say the producers are also entrepreneurs. But what are they doing new? Same storyline, actors maybe from the northern India, from the southern India, and they're working on a script and they're delivering. So should I call them as an entrepreneur? Think, should I? So how should I start? Let's say that continuing with the same example, that organic soap. So guide me on how should I get started in this journey. Should I float a Google form to all of you, or should I interview you, or should I just work with Bhanushree ma'am and get started on the production of the soap? What should be the first step?
Based on the product.
Huh?
Based on the product which we are creating. No, there is a demand for soap.
So that means if there is a demand, then I should ideally talk with all of you. So that means you are going with an assumption that there is a demand. Even before I start, I'm assuming that there is a. So like me, there are entrepreneurs who have certain set of assumptions. Yes or no? Assuming there is a demand. But having these assumptions, can I directly jump into the making of the product? Huh. So what sort of analysis are we talking about? Assuming there is a demand, then what is that analysis called? Market research is one of the technique. Then what else?
Customer analysis.
Customer analysis, okay. And
Studying the market.
Studying the market, right? Now, all of you mentioned in the beginning of the class that what are your thoughts on entrepreneurship is that you create a product, you take care of the finances, input, output, cash flow, right? Study the market. So that means my assumption is not only about the product demand. My assumption is also about that whether I have the resources to put it in the manufacturing of soap. That is one assumption. Even I have a demand, but what is the guarantee that people are going to buy it? I will create enough revenue that will oversee or overpass my cost incurred. So there are certain level of assumptions that is associated with the entire process of entrepreneurship. It's just not with the product or service, yes or no? Am I clear what I'm trying to say? Then how do I test those assumptions? You said customer research or market research. Market research is only to gauge my demand of my product. But none of you asked me that, Jayashree ma'am, do you have enough resources in terms of manpower or in terms of technologies to build that soap? None of you had these assumptions. None of you also asked me that how are you going to sell that product? What kind of channel? Are you going to give a subscription for buying soap? Advertisement. So how do you which source of advertisement or which source of selling is a tested one?
Free samples,
Free samples.
right.
So that means if I have to say, there are 3 types of assumptions that are involved in the entire entrepreneurship process. One is related to the product or service that I'm launching. Another one to see whether I have the team, whether I have the resources, whether I have the partners with me that will help me to create the soap. And the next part is how this soap will be delivered to you. So all of these have assumptions that I need to test. Without testing, then I will not be able to run a successful business. Yes or no? Now, which brings me to the next question. What do you generally think are the major loopholes or pitfalls in entrepreneurship?
Changes of customer habits.
Changes of customer habit, okay, very good. And
Competition.
competition, yes, okay.
Grey market.
Huh? Income levels of the customer and miscalculation. See, ideally, the major reason of failure in entrepreneurship, you would have heard reports saying that 90% of the startup fail. And we are very quick in judging the entrepreneur. Is it the fault of the entrepreneur or is it the fault of us? It's the fault of the process, not the fault of the entrepreneur. The entrepreneurship process failed because there was some miscalculation or some misalignment in what we are trying to deliver and how it was being perceived to be used. The reason is that you are building a product or service that no one actually wants. I might go with the assumption that, people of, there are different skin types, Indian skin type, and there is a demand for soap, so people will buy my soap. But it might happen that people actually do not require a soap at the very first place. So you are building something that no one wants. What can be the second reason of failure? Calculation of research, and someone mentioned the point that customer preferences or demands change every day. And I am not agile enough or resilient enough to track those changes. Updating, right? Third, what can be the third reason?
The product is technology oriented. So technology changes.
So technology changes, that means I ran out of cash before even introducing the product in the market. Competition. So because of technological changing at a fast pace, I was not able to keep up, and I also lost money and resources that before my product launch in the market, I'm out of cash. So these are the three areas. And sometimes, even though you have an idea, you just get so bogged down about all of those happenings in terms of environment, in terms of competition, you do not have a pathway of how do I proceed, yes or no. These are the major avenues. So I want you to introduce, I did not change the first slide, I realized it now. So there is a process which is given by Steve Blank. So he is the author of a book called 4 Steps to Epiphany, right? And the portion that I'm going to teach you is from that. The book is heavily priced. It is somewhere around 8,000 INR, right? The person, Steve Blank, is an 8-time entrepreneur himself. And now he's an educator, I think, in Harvard, right? So his book actually talks about how to scale a startup successfully. And following this framework, customer development model, right? Almost 10,000 startups have successfully followed this model and scaled beautifully, right? Now, if you see on your screen, there are 4 types of major parts of the customer development model. So they are customer discovery, customer validation, customer creation, and company building. And we are going to focus only on the customer discovery part. So basically, the book, the 4th Step to Epiphany, talk about that entrepreneurs has some set of assumptions when they get started in doing their business. But these assumptions need to be tested well in the market to give them a direction that the product or service that they are going to launch in the market meets the demand. Now, I have some set of assumptions, right? And I want to test it. So can I succeed that without testing? I can simply write a business plan, right? And then I can go to the investor that please fund me. What are the evidence that the business plan that I wrote is a reflection of the actual scenario of the environment? Should I develop a business plan, or should I test assumptions and make it as a hypothesis to see how the company cares about that problem? What should be the process? Am I clear or not?
Test the hypothesis.
That means we need to test the hypothesis, and that's what the book talks about. That you have assumptions, right? You want to make it a hypothesis and test, and then build or scale a business. And this entire process is done across 4 stages. So basically, this 4 stages talk about, so customer discovery in simple words is how do you identify the problem of the customers, right? What are their needs, want, pain? What are their preference or buying behavior, right? Customer discovery talks about that. The second one, customer validation, is that how do you, develop a replicable sale process of sales? What happens in sales? You have heard the word called salesman, right? What does a salesman do? Sells the product, and they are so convincing in their approach that they turn a process customer. You might have seen a few years back, there were a lot of people who are doing business of Amway business, right? So the salesman how beautifully he convinced, even though you did not have a need of that product, but they made you buy the product, right? So validation talks about that, how can you develop a sales model and bring more customers that will help you to scale your business. customer creation talks about that how do you even create enough more demand to bring in more customers, and company building talks about that how do you scale up your business and execute the plan, right? And our focus is on the customer, right? How many of you have heard this word called Dropbox? Dropbox. How many of you have heard? Huh?
It's like the customers.
It's
It's like the customers.
no Dropbox.
It is available in banks now.
So it is a cloud provides a cloud storage service, right? And what is the problem it is solving, Dropbox, when compared to Drive, Google Drive or Microsoft? What is the problem that Dropbox is solving? It was founded by Drew 2007, and actually Dropbox implemented all these 4 steps of and launching their business. So what is the usual problem with Google Drive? Storage space, right? And many a time you face difficulty in syncing those files, right? And Dropbox actually tapped into this problem. So it is a cloud storage, provides cloud storage services where you can easily store, share, sync multiple files across multiple devices, right? So if it's a bigger file, you can just, it creates a link, and using that link you can share across multiple people, right? Now if you are, Google Drive has a storage limit of, I don't know, what is it, 15 GB or something?
It's meant to be 15 GB.
15 GB, right? So once your drive is full, what you do?
We purchase additional storage.
So you are paying extra, and that extra is going, that how Google is creating revenue, right? Now, what does Dropbox did? So it has a daily storage TB, right? So now let's understand how did they do it, right? So the first one is customer discovery. So they went out to see whether this actually storage and syncing is actually a problem for people, right? And they framed a hypothesis where they tried to conduct interviews. So after conducting interviews, they validated, yes, there is a need of this, right? So they came up with the problem statement that syncing of files across multiple devices is a problem of every individual, right? Now the next step was customer validation. Here is they created a simple demo in demonstrating how their product or service is going to work out. And that simple demo was launched in different tech forums or right? So what happened was that able to manage from 5,000 to 75,000 sign up just looking at the demo. Now what happened is the next step is customer creation. Got the validation, yes, the demo is well received by the people, right? Then they launched a beta version. Beta version is actually to the closer version of the product, right? So in the beta version, what they did was they tried to have a referral program. So many a time you would see some companies that are ordered for the first time, they would say, if you refer this, you will get 50 rupees payback, right? Launch this beta version by saying that if you refer to any of your friends or any relative, you are going to get extra storage, right? And because of this, from 1 lakh, they reached to 1 million customer to something about 40 million over 1.5 years who actually use the product, right? And then they scaled their operation and introduced more features, and now it is one of a $10 billion company with over 700 million users. 700 million is 70 crores, right? Now I want you to now tell me that if I have to start an organic soap, looking into this 4 process, how do I get started with? Just take a minute and give me whatever thoughts come in. I will just switch up to, keep this slide, right? How do I get started? So all the answers that you are giving me for the last 1 hour, right, all of that need to be put in a framework, concrete framework, and then that makes sense. I just cannot say finance, competition, it has to be in a form of a pathway. So how should I get started if you look the screen? Organic soap, so what should be my first step? Customer discovery, exactly right. So how would I go for customer discovery for the organic soap? I will start interviewing people and understand what are their skin concerns. Yes or no? Then would I not be understanding what kind of soap they are currently using? How frequently they are using? Are they, taking bath once a day or twice a day? Will I not understand that? Then what would be my next step?
Using soaps according to seasons.
Using soap according to seasons, right? So in India we have different variation, right? So I also need to take climatic variation into the concern. Now what shall I do in the customer validation? So once I got and sense that yes, there is a demand for it, I move next.
Adding samples in the.
That means I will start selling small samples to those customers and see how this product is actually solving their problem. Once I get the validation from there, where should I move next? Then I want to create some innovative or in an advertising way so that more people come in and use my soap. Exactly, they should be, so I want to bring more people who are willing to pay and use my product. And then, let's say that I have catered the overall Indian market, right? I want to grow more. So should I tap into, similar climatic, zone? Maybe let's say Indonesia or Malaysia.
Once the process was success here, again we have to start with step 1.
Step 1, yes. So that's why it says iterative, right? So let's see how we get started with the customer discovery. So as I mentioned, that is a process, initial and the iterative process of understanding the customer situation, needs and pain point. Now you are going to ask me that, ma'am, how do I know that I have have enough customer, I have tapped into enough customers' responses? Where do I stop my first customer discovery? What would be your answer? If you look, focus on understanding customer problem, preferences, and their buying behavior. So ideally, how many customers should I, ask, or should I interview? What should be your answer? This is a very big question, right? Do I have enough time to, cover all these South India, all India? Random sampling, but how do I know I stop? Any thought? Where should I stop? Else it will, it will take on taking me few months. By the time I'm still doing my customer discovery, someone would have come here and launched the soap itself. Where should I stop? You have to? That means I have to define my market, but what indicator do I have to define my market? Is the next question. What indicator do I have? Now, when I talk about that in customer discovery, we have to understand the people's problem, right? Their pain points and their buying behavior. Now, the way in which you define problem can be translated in 5 ways, which is derived from the Kipling method, 5W and 1H. In short, we say that. You have to understand what is the problem, right? Who has the problem, right? Who has earlier seen or studied this problem? For example, if I am talking about organic, not the first time that I am telling about it. There are Ayurvedic, where people have talked about the benefits of Ayurveda, right? So we also have to see that. Where does this problem happen, right? When does this problem occur? Does this problem, skin problem, occurs during the summer season or during the rainy season? Why is this problem significant, right? And how does this problem is currently being addressed? So this is the way in which you should unfold the problem statement itself. That means I have to develop a questions regarding using this method, and then I need to go to the market or do the customers to understand what are their pain points? Yes or no? Yes? Are we clear? Right? I hope you are not feeling sleepy. Right? It's very difficult to retain attention after. Now the next question is that why do we want a customer discovery? What would happen if I skip the customer discovery? So if I skip the customer discovery, it means that I am going to develop a solution which actually does not have a demand, because I went with my assumption that there is a demand for soap, and I did not interview and I did not understand the actual pain points. Now, we also need to understand that this problem is actually a problem, right? And it is worth solving the problem. Now, for example, in the case of Padman, why do you think this was a problem that need to be addressed? Just think how Arunachalam could have gone through the customer discovery. If any one of you have watched the Padman, what was his journey? How did he do? Anyone remember? With his own family, and there he was ostracized, right? His own wife, she rejected to have that. To schoolgirls, the schoolgirls were also shy, and what he did next? So he himself tried it. He used a goat bladder to store blood, right? And think of how deeply committed he was for a particular problem. He used goat blood and make it in the form of a bladder and store it in his tummy, right? And went around the town to see whether the pad that he has made is able to absorb blood or not, right? So what do you think about where did his customer discovery and validation happened? That means he ran a lot of experiments to validate, which we say is a sample or pilot. You need to do a pilot study, right? Which brings me to the next point, that you have to understand whether this is actually a problem that is worth solving, right? And then you also have to understand, even if you're solving this problem, are you going to get revenue out of it? If you are not profit oriented, if you want to solve a social problem, that's a separate thing. But if you want to generate revenue, you have to think that, yes, there is a bigger enough market that will help me to create revenue, right? And then when you are developing the solution, you also need to think, how does the customer will find you? That's the main part, right? Many a time we have a solution to a problem, but we as customers are not aware of that particular company, right? So you have to understand that how will your customers find you, and they will use your solution and buy from you. So that's the reason why customer discovery section is important. Now this entire discovery can be classified now again into 4 steps. I'll just go back. This is the entire customer development process: discovery, validation, creation, building. But now our focus for this day is customer discovery. The customer discovery itself has another 4 layers, right? On your screen, the first step starts with hypothesis. Now, I've been using the word hypothesis for the last 15-20 minutes. So what does hypothesis mean? It's an assumption that needs to be tested, right? Now, what happens when you test it? Either you approve it or you reject it. So when I asked you the question, what is the evidence you have actually got a signal to proceed ahead? How do you answer? See, that's on your screen. That means you start you have framed a hypothesis. If maximum people say yes to our hypothesis, that means it gives you an indication, yes, there is a need for it. For example, all of us have cleared 10th and 12th boards, right? We used to have chemistry in our school, yes or no? And in that lab, we used to do some titration where we mixed A chemical, B chemical, right? So what does that A chemical, B chemical lead to? Another composition C. And if we do not get composition C, then the lab, people would come and say to you, no, you did not mix the right composition, do it again. So how does this translate to this scenario? So that composition C was a direction for you to identify, yes, I have achieved the result. But here this is a qualitative work, right? You are asking questions. So how do you know that I have received the desired result? That means you have to metric for yourself. Let's say that if 100 people are saying yes to this problem, to my hypothesis, that means there is actually a problem about it, right? Now, when I say that hypothesis, so the hypothesis can be of 5 different types. One hypothesis can be around your product itself. One hypothesis can be around your problem itself. Another one is pricing, demand, market type, and competition. But our focus at this point is to understand the hypothesis around the product and the problem itself, right? So the next step is that you want to check the hypothesis or test the hypothesis, right? So for that, you need to interview people who are near to you. And then you present the problem, and then you get what they are currently doing to solve the problem, and then you see what are the available products in the market. For in the case of Padman, right? He has a yeah.
There are many segmentations in a hypothesis. So there is only one way, but as per research, generally as per research, the variables are interdependent.
Yes,
so
yes.
That it will be one thing again affects to other one.
Absolutely correct. So one thing both are entailed. So you as an entrepreneur, then you have to make a decision. What is that technical thing that you have to build your hypothesis around, without which your product cannot be launched in the market? Now, if I have to go back to the Murugathan example, right? Who were the first that he tried to test? His wife, right? And how did he present the problem? That you are using discarded or materials, right? Can you check using this? Customer understand, then what did he do? He reached out to different schoolgirls and older women, right? And then he also tried to see what was the available pads, because there are pads in the market, right? So that is the way in which you build a hypothesis around the problem, right? Once you have this validated, then you move to the product. So the product that you are going to introduce, and then you see, you build a demo, you visit more customers, and then once you get their validation, you get an indication that the product, the problem, the business model, all of the assumptions or hypotheses that I have made stands true. Now, what do I mean by that? I'll tell you. So when I say that, the first hypothesis that you build around is your problem statement. So how do I build a hypothesis? Just look into the example. We believe that customers struggle with problem and needs solution. Now I gave example of Dropbox, right? So Dropbox is solving a problem of file sharing and file syncing, right? So how does this? So these are the different hypotheses. Just take a minute and see how Dropbox could have framed the hypothesis. Take a minute and check. Address to your question. So each of them are interrelated. So it means that you have to do all these hypotheses at the similar time. So that busy professional, working professional struggle to access file storage across devices. So that was a problem statement, right? And then the product was a cloud storage device. So they built another hypothesis around the product, that if we develop a cloud storage app, it will solve the file issue. So apart from that, they had other hypotheses built around their market, built around their competition. We believe that our cloud service storage app will be simpler and faster. We believe that we are entering into a market with enough room for innovation, and we are creating demand or sales for our product by referral program. So you build different type of hypothesis in your step 1. So it might happen now it depends from industry to industry or from sector to sector to understand which is the most important hypothesis that you want to check. But the most important hypothesis where you get started is with the problems hypothesis. because you witnessed a problem in terms of solving a gap or identifying a demand. So that means you have to translate this into a problem statement first. So this is how you frame a hypothesis. So are we clear? Now there is,
You can close and maybe you can have 5 minutes.
5 minutes, yes, yes, yes. So the next one is that once you have created the problem hypothesis, you want to conduct interviews or survey, right? And you decide your own metric, where do you get the signal that yes, I have enough reviews or good thing about it, right? Now for example, how did Dropbox did? Dropbox tried to find 20 professional to say that yes, the syncing files, which is an issue, right? And they also understand what current forms of file sharing devices they were doing in forms of email or USB drive. And then they also get the knowledge that who are their competitors who are having the same storage or syncing devices. Now the next one is, once you get the clarity on the problem hypothesis, you want to move towards the product hypothesis. So if product is a cloud storage, you build a hypothesis around it saying that, does your product is delivering value? Please remember, we started with the session, what type of value does an entrepreneur create? So if you are creating a storage, so what kind of value or what kind of problem this is solving? And then so what did Dropbox, how did Dropbox did it? So they created a demo of this app, right? And they collected feedback from 50 plus users, and those 50 plus users that yes, this product solves the problem and it creates value in terms of economic, right? So once you create the product hypothesis, the next one is for you to verify whether the hypothesis that you have built, does it give you a signal, yes, this solves a customer problem, the hypothesis around your product, the hypothesis around your market, and the hypothesis around your customer. So one slide that I missed here is, in entrepreneurship, you need to be sure of these 3 things. So these are the 3 criteria that you should understand. One is desirability, one is feasibility, another one is feasibility. So what does this talk about? Desirability means that actually, do people want this solution? Whether this is a problem that is needed to be solved, right? So there you build the hypothesis to check or to test the hypothesis around it. Now feasible means, do I have enough resources in terms of raw materials, enough resources in terms of team members with background, enough resources in terms of lab, or enough resources in terms of money to build that product or to build that service. So there you also need to build a hypothesis. The third hypothesis is that, having considered the feasibility and the desirability part, is our product going to generate enough revenue for our business? Will our revenue overcome the cost part? So these are the 3 things that you need to take care. So I will just move to this part, and you tell me, is there any doubt on the customer discovery part? So I wanted to do an activity, but I'm running out of time, right? So how did Dropbox verified? So they launched a beta version, for which I mentioned that their signups went from 1 million to 10 million of users, right? And then you need to understand, if customers are giving you feedback, right? You need to work on that feedback to refine your product offerings, right? So there are some aspect where you need to be very sure of, because you might fall a trap here. As an entrepreneur, your job is to listen more than to talk more. You should understand what the users are saying. You should not have any preconceived notions about when you go for an interview, right? What happens is, there are many a time we only hear what we want to hear. And that kind of error is called confirmation bias. Right? For example, I taught you so many things, right? You heard only about entrepreneurship, but choose to ignore the other aspect that I taught you there. And you go and teach someone the part only that you heard is true, That means for that person, you are creating. So as an entrepreneur, you need to be biased, you need to go for a bias-free mind, right? For example, people in northern India have skin concerns during winters because extreme winter is there. People in southern India have concerns during the summers but not in winters. Not go with a biased mind saying that, oh, this product will only be applicable for you during winters and this soap will not be applicable for you during summers. So that kind of bias-free mind you need to say. Now, interviewing the wrong people is also one of the common mistakes that you can have in the customer discovery process, because someone mentioned the customer segmentation. So how do I segment the market is a next question, right? Any idea on how do I segment the market? On the basis of characteristics or consumption pattern, on the basis of geography, and next, education pattern behavior, that's one arena. Income, and another assumption is that what they actually want to use with that product. I mean, how the utility of the product is perceived, right? For example, I will buy a laptop because for academic purpose, but someone will buy a laptop for gaming purpose. So how do they use this product is one way of segmenting the customer. To be very sure that even if you interview the wrong people, you need your hypothesis negative result. So that gives you direction, yes, this is a wrong set of people. Now, different methods are the survey, interview, data analysis. Focus group means that small set of people, let's say 10, 15 of people, right? So this is a focus group. What I'm teaching now is a focus group, right? And then A/B testing. So actually I wanted to do a activity with all of you, but I ran out of time. But if any one of you quickly see this problem statement and say, how do you develop your hypothesis for this? So it will be better if you note this down, and I'll go to the customer discovery slide or take a picture of it. So how do you get started? You heard from someone that this is a problem people are facing nowadays, right? So where should you get started?
You have to target the persons who is
So either you have to talk, or you need to first create a hypothesis around it.
hypothesis.
So how do you create a hypothesis? Now, if this is the framework for the customer discovery process, so where should you get started? With
From the home itself.
with the
From our home itself.
from home itself, right? So would you make the hypothesis around the problem first, or would you make the hypothesis around the product first? Problem, right? So if that's a problem, then what would be the hypothesis for this problem? You have the problem statement with you. So how would you hypothesize the problem statement hypothesis? Should I move to this one? So how do you hypothesize this problem statement? So these are the points, but hypothesis is always a statement, right? I mentioned that this is how you need to create a hypothesis. So this is the template. We believe, so tell me, how do you hypothesize this? We believe? Because of the daily routine, so they need this solution, right? So this is where you get started, right? And then how do you go about it? Are you going to make other hypotheses at this point, or you just want to make a hypothesis about the problem statement? Only go with the problem. First you want to sedentary lifestyle people, okay. So sometimes it might happen that an entrepreneur has a version of how his product or service going to look like. And there is some category of entrepreneur who just have the idea. So if you're an entrepreneur who have the version of their product, you may go with all the hypothesis. But if you're an entrepreneur just with the you can follow this step. So I will leave all of you with this framework so you can take it as an exercise and you can do it yourself. What would be your steps to complete the first cycle of the customer discovery? So with this, I end this session. I hope I did not take much time. So thank you so much. This is my email ID if you want to get connected with me, to reach out. Any questions from what we taught? Huh.
How many entrepreneurs or startup companies have succeeded in India? Just rating means percentage of success.
So, I mean, the last statistics that I read was 90% failure. 90% failure, right? Any idea how many startups we have in our country right now? Just a general knowledge. Any number that comes to your mind? Any number?
10 to 20 lakhs.
Any number? Ideally 150 or 160 is the startup we have. How many districts in our country we have? We have states, right? How many districts in India we have?
Startup districts.
No, district, not startup. Let's come out of startup. Startup is done. How many districts in India we have? 767 ideally. So 767 district in our country, right? Lot of behavioral, differences in needs and want of different across different state. 160,000 startup are there. So there are problems that are lying to be discovered and uncovered. So the only thing that we are lacking is the fear that in our mind that we will fail. Unless we try it, we will not. You might ask a question, then why you're not an entrepreneur itself? You're not an entrepreneur, but you're teaching entrepreneurship, right? That's the first question that people ask me, right? No, it's not risk taking. So you need to understand that entrepreneur is both an science and art itself. What we are teaching you is the science, right? I come from academic, right? So I teach you the science part of it. The art part of it is taught by the entrepreneur themselves. So this is a blend of both science and art and entrepreneurship. That's why it's called a craft. The more you practice it, right, the more you get better at it, and the more you know the ins and outs of the statement, right? So with this, I end. I took a lot of time. Thank you so much for being so patient.